Good afternoon. This is the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission meeting for the month of February. My name is Pat McNally. I'm serving as the... What am I serving as, Mr. Fields, today?
You're the chair?
I'm the chair today. Okay.
Vice chair and acting chair.
All right. Let's start the meeting off with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin with some introductions, I want to read the appeals, the notice of appeal process. This is the appeal of any decisions from the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission. And for new commissioners today, this gives notice to anyone who feels they've been an adverse decision against them during the course of one of our rulings. And this sets out their rights to appeal. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you are not satisfied with a decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. All right, I would like to introduce our new commission members, right? Mr. Fields, Betsy Williams. Hello, Ms. Williams.
Hi.
Would you tell us a little bit about who you are? Just introduce yourself to the commission, please.
Yes, my name's Betsy Williams. I'm originally from Georgia. I've lived here for 16 years. And I, up until Christmas Day of 2020, resided on 2nd Avenue, and then we were bombed. And I still live downtown, and I have a business for vacation rentals, and that's what I do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
What's your interest in being on the Transportation Licensing Commission?
Well, I'm interested in making sure that things run well, that we do the best we can do in terms of being citizens and giving people, and making sure that we're just doing a good job as taxpayers and residents.
Thank you. And Michael Hayes, met you just a moment ago. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and your interest in being on the commission?
Sure. Michael Hayes. I'm a native Nashvilleian. Grew up in Nashville. Work in downtown Nashville. Worked downtown since 2003, but grew up running around the streets as a kid. Worked downtown in the mid-'90s, and then, like I said, as a child with my family. I'm in commercial real estate. In Nashville and work throughout Davidson County. My interest in being on the Transportation Licensing Commission is to, similar to Betsy, try to make Nashville a better place, try to give back to our community, and really help our community thrive.
And I didn't warn both of you, but we are actually broadcast live during our meetings here. So I didn't want to tell you that up front in case you might choke. But, thank you for sharing with us today, and welcome to the Transportation Licensing Commission.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right. Let's see. Have members of the committee... Oh, yeah. Oh, Mr. Fields, would you introduce the new members of your staff?
I'm very happy to say that Ms. Stillman's office team is now complete with Brandy Brantley and Amanda Mullins. They've been with us now 2 days. So they have been working diligently, studying, being trained, and I've had to answer the phone. And I forgot what it was like to have to answer those hard questions. So I'm glad they're here, so they will soon know the answers. And I'm very proud and happy, and I know Ms. Lisa will train them well, and I think you're going to be very happy with your staff.
Thank you, and welcome. All right, are we ready to get down to business?
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at you, Mr. Fields.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's see, have the commission members had an opportunity to read the minutes from our previous meeting in January?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
I'll move we accept the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Whoop, I forgot, the chairperson's not allowed to vote. So, all right, so the approval of the minutes has passed. Mr. Fields, I see on our agenda today we have other passenger vehicles for hire, and the first thing up is review of new company applications. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Would you fill us in about the applications for Elisa, NASCAR, Nightlight, and Yaya?
All of them have applied and are in order, except NASCAR LLC needs to be pulled till either later in the agenda. The owner is also a driver, and he's on today for a hearing as a driver, so we thought it appropriate to have to ask you to hear the company application as well as the driver application in one package. And since he's not present at the moment, we would ask you not take action on NASCAR until another meeting. NASCAR, I guess.
NASCAR.
Take NASCAR if you want. But Elias Transportation, Nightlight Limo, and Yaya Transportation is all in order.
Commissioner Williams or Commissioner Hayes, did you get an opportunity to review those applications?
Yes.
Were there any questions about the applications that you had?
Do you typically get, relative to notices, like I look at the first notice from Ellis Transportation, we didn't have a human listed as the reference. We had a bank, but not a person. Do you typically get in your applications humans?
You know, to be honest with you, yes, there are typically people we would call at the bank and or be available at the bank, and that's probably an oversight that we will get those references back on. And aside from that, it would be, I think, appropriate to go, but we'll certainly get that corrected.
Did you call any of the references do you typically call references for all the people?
We usually do spot reference checks on most of them, and many of them have already been drivers for other activities. For instance, we'll have a cab driver who decides he wants to be an OPVH driver. So we already have background on most of them. So obviously I didn't call Pinnacle Bank, so I failed on that one, but we will take care of that.
Any other questions from any of the commissioners? All right, is there a motion about Ellis, Nightlight, and Yaya?
I apologize, I did have one question. I'm sorry.
Yes, okay.
On Yaya
Mm-hmm.
and on Nightlight Limo, I noticed on number 9, one of them said transportation's persons from point A to point B using rideshare apps, and the other one said the same thing, using Uber, Lyft, and I don't know
Yeah.
if they were saying that's what they used to do, or if that's what they plan to do, and do we?
There are actually 3 levels, is my understanding, of Uber and probably of Lyft. You have basic Uber, which is a driver, then you have Uber Black, then I think there's actually an Uber Luxury. In order to be an Uber Black or an Uber Luxury, you actually have to come, they require local permitting. So, which is basically what we described in 674 when Uber and Lyft first came to Nashville. So, in order for them to drive this particular level of Uber, they have to start their own local company. So, what they end up doing is come in, they apply, they go through the process, they have their own cars, their own separate insurance, and this guarantees all the concerns we had about rideshare when it began. Is this clearly makes sure that there's $1 million liability insurance on those vehicles when they're moving. So that's, anytime you see that on an application, that's what that's all about.
Okay, it's probably been on there before, maybe that's just the first time I've noticed it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion on the 3 new company applications?
I'll move that we accept the applications of Elias Transportation, Nightlight Limo, and Yaya Transportation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Fields, we next have on the agenda review company change request, dealing with Adamsville, Rides with TJ, and L&M Transportation.
Anytime there's a change to the face of an anytime there's a change to the face of an application to the commission, it has to be reported to the commission. So, in their original applications, obviously they had either different names, different addresses, or both. So in order for this to be, for them to make the change, it has to be reported to the commission and ask for your permission. They are in order.
Anybody have any questions or concerns about the change request?
I did not, I moved to accept.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Just just so we're clear, we want to make sure we got the record on that. We have,
We had, on the first one, we had 3 vote for, and we had 3 abstentions, I believe.
okay. And on this last one, how many people said aye, please? All right. So it's unanimous, okay. All right. Now we have the review of the OPVH driver applications. Mr. Fields, why don't we take those one at a time, okay?
Sure, I think that would be appropriate. Mr. Al-Sarifi? Yes. If you'll please come to the podium. Mr. Al-Sarifi has been he has operated as owner of taxi cabs, but not as a cab driver over the years, and has applied to operate another has applied to be a driver for another passenger vehicle for hire. In making his application, he just didn't make any listings of any charges, arrests, or things that should have been on there. And because of your request, anytime this happens, we bring them to the commission. He was qualified. Unfortunately, he did leave several things out.
And Mr. Fields, I noticed on the copy I have that there's a blank space. Seems like something's whited out or blanked on the page.
And he's apparently started and then whited it out.
All right. And you ran just so we're clear, you ran the background check and found several convictions, dispositions of
Correct,
criminal
for the-
charges that should have been listed listed as state and local arrest convictions on the application, right?
Yes, all of our for-hire drivers are required to do fingerprint background checks under state law. They are, we send them for the purpose of the new commissioners. We arrange their appointments. We send them to where they get their fingerprints done. Those fingerprint results are then sent back to us directly. We review them, and if they're qualified, we can move them one direction. Or if they fail to list something or there's an issue, we would bring them to you.
And I hate to put you on the spot, Mr. Fields, but can you identify for us the convictions that were not listed? I'm looking at the CJIS data right now, but I didn't know if you already had a summary of it.
In terms, he had for his conviction, 2017 assault, misdemeanor assault, that he was convicted on 5/17/2017. He also had other charges that are also supposed to be listed. A charge back in 97 for a violation of probation was dismissed. Had an aggravated assault in 97 that was dismissed. Had other charges that are a little bit older. Would you like the TBI background?
I've got it right
Oh,
here. I
okay.
was circling them as you were speaking. All right, Mr. El-Sofi. El-Sofi, what's your explanation for not listing any of your prior arrest, retired
Okay, I
charges,
thought-
and convictions on this application?
Yeah, I thought the last 5 years, that's what I thought,
Why would you think that, since it doesn't say the last 5 years on the application?
This what I was thinking. I thought for just the last 5 years. And then I did it the second time, which is, I listed everything there on the second application.
And any time they apply and they fail to fully disclose, we actually stop the process. They're denied and they have to reapply. So on a second application, we typically don't bring to you because it's the same information. They've now gone. They go back in and write down. They get a copy of their background check, and then they can actually fill it out based on the background check that we provide to them.
Wouldn't you agree that knowing you've been convicted of assault is important for this commission to know when reviewing your application?
Yeah, I do. I do agree, but like, I didn't, you know, that's what I thought the last 5 years, and then when they told me I have to do, the second application, which is I list everything, you know.
Does anybody else have some questions they want to ask?
Mr. Fields or Mr. Vice Chair, does, I guess this background, I guess, do you recommend approval given the background? Or is this typical that you approve on this committee or commission?
The way the laws are written, there are certain things that are gonna be automatic disqualifiers.
Yes, sir.
Within the last 5 years, if they'd been convicted of a felony under certain felonies, and it's, you know, they would be the felonies you would describe, they're automatically disqualified. If they have those charges prior, they're qualified, and depending on what they're charged with, then we would bring them to the commission for a hearing, just so you're aware of it. So the commission's position over the years is if they're qualified, if you don't see any reason to believe that any of this behavior would continue or begin again, then you would have typically you would take an action to approve. That has not always been the case. If you, for whatever reason, believe there's a problem, you could obviously you could deny them. You could also bring them on a probation period and require them to serve a period of time with a specific company, and we would then review over the time periods. For instance, if someone has a drug problem, you have ordered drug tests. In this case, that obviously that's not the issue, but you know, as far as with the position we've always had as a staff, and I'll defer back to legal if she would rather talk about it, is a standpoint of if they qualify, they qualify, and unless we have a sense that there may be something else going on, we'd recommend that you go ahead and approve. But when they leave it out, the commission, again, for the new commissioners, you ask if some kinds of things are not listed that should have been listed, you'd like to be able to visit with them in person.
But multiple felony assault charges, they qualify.
Charges do not disqualify.
I'm sorry, well,
If you have more than 10,
hold
if
on.
you have more than 2 in 10 years. for
Ms.
instance.
Costona, since we have a relatively short agenda today, would you mind going back over the
Yeah, I'd be glad
the
to.
rules that we have regarding what's disqualified and what can, okay?
So this is for driver's permits for other passenger vehicles for hire.
Right.
Let me pull that up real quick. That would be chapter 674. Specifically, section 110D, it looks like. No convictions in the last 5 years for any of the following offenses, including bodily injury or death, and no convictions in the last 3 years for any of the following offenses not involving injury or death: hit and run, driving under the influence of an alcoholic beverage or drug, or reckless driving. And then I think the criminal background one has more.
It does.
Which is, okay, any applicant shall, in addition to any disqualifications listed elsewhere in this chapter, be disqualified if the applicant has been convicted, pleaded guilty, nolo contendere, placed on judicial diversion pursuant to Tennessee Code annotated section 40-35-313, or been released from incarceration, probation, or parole within a period of 7 years prior to the date of the application for violation of any of the following criminal offenses under the laws of Tennessee, any other state, or the United States of America: homicide, rape, aggravated assault, kidnapping, robbery, burglary, domestic assault or domestic violence, child sex abuse, any sex-related offense, leaving the scene of an accident, criminal solicitation or criminal attempt to commit any of the above, perjury or false swearing in making a statement under oath in connection with the application for a driver's permit, or the felony possession, sale, or distribution of narcotic drugs or controlled substances. Is that all of it, Billy? Okay. That's it.
what was the failure to disclose? Failure to,
If at the time of the application, wait, where was that? the applicant is charged with any of the offenses in one above.
Got it.
No, wait, I'm not reading the right one. Perjury or false swearing in making any statement under oath in connection with the application for a driver's permit. That's the one you're talking about, I think.
Perjury or statement or, okay.
But that would be, like, he would have had to have been criminally prosecuted for that.
Yes, ma'am.
You do have some felony convictions for aggravated assault, correct?
Yes, sir.
How many?
I'm not sure, maybe one or two. I mean, everything's felony, you know.
Well, you got an opportunity to review your criminal record and to fill out a second application correctly, right?
Yes.
And you today don't remember how many felony convictions you have?
We need another chair. There is one.
No, be honest, I'm not sure.
Okay. What were the facts behind your felony conviction for aggravated assault in Judge Wyatt's courtroom?
It was, I mean, it's a long time ago, and it was, I mean, I did make mistake, and I learned from my mistake, and I should get a second chance, you know.
You were also convicted of assault with provocative touching in Judge Dozier's courtroom. What were the facts behind that one?
What's that? I don't.
Inappropriately touching someone.
No, this case is dismissed.
All right. What were the facts behind it that led to your arrest?
I did not get arrested for it.
Well, I'm looking at indictment number 98-C-2139 in Judge Dozier's courtroom. It says here, you had an attorney. It says that the description was assault, offensive, or provocative contact. That usually is inappropriate touching of someone in a
No.
private area.
No, that's not correct.
That's not you then?
That's not correct. I never have this problem. Assault, yes, but touching property, no.
Says that you completed the court process in that case.
It's nothing. I never have this issue. Never have it. Assault, yes, but I never have this case.
It indicates that the disposition was a plea to a misdemeanor assault charge with 11 months, 29 days probation,
Yes.
40, 35, 30, 13.
and that probation was transferred to Michigan. Did you live in Michigan too?
Yeah, I live in Michigan, yeah.
Do you have criminal convictions in Michigan?
No, I don't.
If I check, am I going to find you don't
Yeah,
have
I
any?
don't, no, I'm sure.
The misdemeanor charges of assault, can you remember what those facts were?
It was from, what is it, 96 all the way to 99, I guess.
I'm asking what the facts were. What led to you being arrested and convicted of those charges?
I mean, it's kind of assault with the ex-girlfriend.
What'd she accuse you of doing?
Assault her, you know. That's why I moved to Michigan.
All right, and you're right.
That's
I
the
do
only.
see that
That's
there's
the only reason I moved to Michigan, because he tried to get away from her.
And I agree.
All this case, the charges is from one person. I mean, yeah, one person, two person.
All right, because there is a pattern of 1997 assault, again in 97.
Yeah, all the way
It's
to
like
all the way
August
like
of
2000.
2010, October of 2010, December of 2010, and then the felonies in 2015
That's not what this said.
and 2016.
Domestic assault or domestic.
Yeah, these.
Oh, and one more in 2017. May 17, 2017, guilty of assault with bodily injury, indictment number 2017-A-239.
I think this is the same case with the 2016.
Okay. And if I look these warrants up, you're telling me they all came from the same person?
2 different person.
2 people?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the one from 96 to 2000, that's the one person.
And who's the one that resulted in the misdemeanor that was transferred to Michigan? Who was the victim in that case?
There's no, I mean, this don't, I moved to Michigan. There's no victim.
Case number 98-C-2139, you were found guilty of misdemeanor assault. You were charged with assault with offensive or provocative contact. The disposition I described before with 11 months, 29 days probation. And then it says your probation was transferred to Michigan, and it lists a victim, but it doesn't give a name. Who was the person that brought the charges against you?
Okay, the victim, she wasn't from Michigan.
She was from Michigan.
Yeah, yeah.
And you moved to Michigan?
Okay, I've moved to Michigan from, I believe 96 to 99. Okay, and this one I meet this person, and then she moved to Nashville, and then she moved back to Michigan. That's in 2003.
Mr. Fields, you mentioned that he has previously had a permit to drive a cab?
Not to drive a cab to me, he was owner of a cab.
Owner of a cab?
Owner of several cabs.
Several cabs.
And that would be a different application process altogether.
Did he list these? That application also asked for a background?
Well, we would not have done fingerprint background checks are not required on those particular applications for cab company
Owner.
vehicle owners.
Do they request for the person to self-disclose any background?
They do have to self-disclose. I do not have that particular application in front of you today.
I'd be curious to know whether there was a candidate.
Ms. Costonis has actually brought something to my attention, and as we're reviewing the OPVH, although it is a misdemeanor, as she's reading the law, and I always depend on her to read the law, she has a concern that there has been a conviction within the last 7 years of the domestic assault charge. And if that's the case, even though it's not a felony, as all of the others are, she says it would not necessarily require a felony. So based on her interpretation to me at the table, and I'll have to stop to make sure she would agree, but it may be on the face of it, he may not be qualified because of that one, despite the fact that it's not a felony.
And what was the disposition of the 2016 one?
But wait, there's the
2016, who's that?
there's the 2017 A-239, which is assault with domestic bodily injury.
It seems to be within the 7 years if he,
But it's
what was the
I
disposition?
can't say necessarily that it's domestic violence, so it's
Domestic bodily injury, of course.
It's domestic bodily injury. but-
Oh, okay, so if that's a materially different charge than domestic assault, then.
And it was.
It says domestic assault or domestic violence.
Yeah, but it might be because it says assault, domestic bodily injury, or DOM bodily injury.
I'm sure you're more qualified to read that, Commissioner McMillan, than I.
Well, I'll tell you right now, here's why I would say it probably is domestic violence. Mr. Al-Safori, in your 2017 case that was settled, it looks like on May 17, 2017, one of your conditions of probation was to attend and complete a battered intervention program and no contact with the victim in that case, right?
Yes,
Who was the victim in that case?
my ex-wife.
Ms. Costonis, the victim in the 2017 case was his ex-wife.
I mean,
And-
it looks to me I was looking at the notes on the disposition, and again, Commissioner, the Vice Chair may actually know better than I do, but it looks to me like Mr. Al-Sorfi may have taken a 40-35-313 diversion in response to that, the charges in 2016 and 2017, or one of them. And that is listed in this 674-120C that I just read to you, that if they have taken that type of plea to these types of charges within the last 7 years, then they are ineligible.
And the only thing I would add to that is that I don't see the 4035-313 judicial diversion on the case number 2017-A-239. It just,
I was kind of interpreting that because it said 1129.
no, 1129 is just a misdemeanor.
Okay.
That's a, misdemeanors are anything less than 1 year,
Well,
so we
that's
haven't.
just it. We thought C1 said felony, but it doesn't have the word felony in there anywhere.
As I recall, when we were revisiting those particular rules, we wanted to keep domestic violence in there, whether misdemeanor or felony, because of in the interest of protecting the public, should someone have that on their record.
Mr. Fields notes that the incarceration special conditions on the resolution says defendant complete a batterer's intervention program, no contact with victim, proof of completion of a batterer's intervention program in April will satisfy the requirement. 10 days on weekends. So it sounds like he actually did time for that.
Yeah, that's why I asked him who was the victim, and he says it's his ex-wife, so. I think you're not I don't think you're an eligible candidate for a permit today.
Okay.
Would it be possible to, and if it is possible, can we take a beat and just confirm and do the research, and if so, do we need a movement for that?
No.
I just want to make sure. I know that we're looking it up in real time, but I hear the words "I think," and I guess I would feel better if we knew with certainty.
Well, if he was charged, and again, the interpretation from legal, and I always defer to legal. If he was if he
was
not a
convicted,
felony,
pleaded guilty, no
Yeah.
low contendere, placed on judicial diversion pursuant to 4035-313, or been released from incarceration, probation, or parole within a period of 7 days prior to the 7 years prior to the date of application for a violation of the following criminal offenses, which includes domestic assault or domestic violence.
And the 10 days would be considered the incarceration on the weekends.
Yes.
That is what it appears to me.
However, here's what I would recommend, subject to the commission's, I agree with you, that all I'm looking at is the CJIS sheet right here. We can pull the disposition, we can pull the warrant.
Maybe
we
defer
can
it
get
and then
we can
do
get
all
the
that.
indictment and get the judge the indictment and the judgment and come back at our next meeting and
that's a good
know
idea.
for sure.
I'm not sure they actually have to take action as much as just set it aside and direct staff to research and then
Yeah,
come back.
if the conclusion is he's ineligible, then it may not be necessary for it to be brought back before the commission.
Correct, but I suspect the commission probably would like to know what the outcome was.
You would like to have
so.
an update regardless at the following commission meeting? Yeah, no, that would.
What does everybody
That would
think?
take a motion.
I'd move
As the
deferral.
doctor would say, I concur.
All right, there's a motion to defer it for 1 month. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
And thank you, I appreciate that. Kind of pulling us back rather than guessing here from the CJIS
That was
report,
a
so.
good question.
Mr. Fields, will you be able to have someone get the indictment, the judgment, and the warrant? And I would like to see also the warrant that is behind this indictment, because what happens usually is a warrant is taken out against the person, and then it's bound over to the grand jury and an indictment's returned. The warrant will have more of the factual basis
Correct.
in the affidavit than just the indictment.
Uh-huh.
But there will also be a judgment that will tell us very specifically what the outcome of your case was. Because you seem to have some problems remembering it. So,
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember these days, so, I just, I mean, I know I got a few, yes, but, I mean, some of them dismissed, some of them, I played guilty for, yeah, so,
did you understand what we're doing today?
yeah,
Okay,
so we good?
Thank you.
yes, and I
We'll-
think your office will notify him as to whether he needs to come back in a month from now or not.
We'll do the investigation and additional investigation. We'll advise you on what you need to do.
Okay.
All right?
All right, thank you, guys.
You're welcome. I know that took a little bit of time, but I think it was good to, especially for the new commission members, to see kind of how we do that. Often, we'll sit here and make judgment calls as to whether we trust the person to have a permit to operate a vehicle or a scooter or whatever permit they're requesting. They may not necessarily be ineligible, but we'll look at their record and kind of make a judgment call. And I will say, I think most of the commission members here have been in favor of people getting permits, getting, as Mr. Alsofori said, a second chance. And we would be hurting for record operators if we were to exclude everybody that had a criminal record, so. All right,
I mean,
Mr. Fields.
all of the different chapters may have slightly
Yes.
different provisions about that, so it is important to look them up on a case-by-case basis.
I wanna look at one more down, one more there.
All right, next on our agenda is Timothy Hastings. And
Mr. Hastings, you present?
Mr. Fields, after previously looking at Mr. Hastings' application, I assume he's sort of similar to Mr. Alsofori, that he did not list his prior convictions,
Correct,
and he's not here today.
correct.
Have we heard from Mr. Hastings?
Mr. Hastings was supposed to have been here today. He also is the fellow who has the NASCAR company application as well.
Has he come before us before?
No.
Why don't we go on to Mr. Lewis next, and we'll just see if Mr. Hastings shows up, since he has two things on the agenda today, right? Anthony Lewis is on our agenda today. Mr. Fields, what's the situation with Mr. Lewis?
In making his application, he also failed to fully disclose, he has a misdemeanor conviction in 2018 of, that he failed to list on a casual exchange. And that's, again, the most recent one, which usually will, the most noticeable, because you're wondering why he would have left off something recently.
So
Anything
you-
else of particular interest in his background?
There are other charges of casual, or there's some other charges of misdemeanor charges on casual exchange. There's also there's some theft charge of conviction back in 2012. So there, it's from an interest standpoint, there are just several charges again, which also get you back to the commission. There's also some dismissals. Back in 2009, he had charges, they were dismissed. Did have a guilty plea back in 2007 of the casual exchange. So he does have several charges. Most of them are old. The most recent would have been the 2017.
Mr. Lewis, I noticed that in your application, you did put some things down.
Yes,
What happened that you didn't make it complete? For
Just-
instance, the 2018 charge.
Yeah, that was my question. You remembered something from 1992, but not 2018?
yeah, it was definitely more memorable in that year. As far as 2018, I just simply didn't have a copy of my background with me to be able to disclose, because I would have put everything.
What about the 2001 community corrections case? Was that a felony?
I believe it was, yes.
That's a sale of marijuana.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And you were on community corrections for how long?
I think less than a year, but I'm not sure.
Well, how did you fail not to put a felony charge down?
I had some things that were supposed to be expunged, and I didn't have the record either of that, of all the things that were expunged or were not. But again, it was just a matter of not having a copy, through my history of whatever I've done that was against the law that may have been dismissed or not dismissed, I don't remember every single one of them or every step. Some of them are more memorable than others, but nothing was to be deceitful. It was just simply not having the information there in front of me so that I can include everything that would have been considered.
What about the 2005 18-month sentence for, looks like another drug charge, possession marijuana for resale?
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, these felony charges you didn't put down.
No, it wasn't that I was trying to omit any particular charge or its nature, felony or misdemeanor. Again, it was really just not having the information from my background to be able to go, as I did with the second application, to be able to put everything on. It was nothing that I was particularly trying to leave off or omit or anything.
What was the nature of the 2018 case? What were the facts behind your arrest and your conviction?
2018. I think I was just, I was going home towards Hendersonville, and I had a few grams of weed in the car.
In 2014, let's see, an assault, serious bodily injury. What can you tell us about that? It's
2014
incident
assault with a
date,
bodily injury.
June 21st, 2014.
Was it a conviction?
It is,
It's
Yeah.
not, it just
So-
showed.
it does say misdemeanor,
Probation violation, misdemeanor.
so is that,
So the probation violation may have been what occurred in 2014.
okay. And that was what he was on probation for, I
Yeah,
think.
I think so.
All right.
What was the assault charge about?
I'm not really sure. I hadn't really had a nature of assault charges, but to the best of my recollection, I'm thinking it's going to be something that maybe a domestic that was between me and my wife. That would be my guess, without having the background or the details involved. But I'm not really I haven't really earned assault charges.
Well, it says that you were charged with aggravated assault, which is a felony, and it says bodily injury. And then it looks like it was reduced down to a misdemeanor, and you were placed on probation.
Then I do remember that.
Well, let's hear it.
I don't know where the probation came from, but that definitely was a fight with my wife. The problem was I jumped in my car to leave, but she told them that I tried to hit her with the car, which was absolutely not the case. I did leave. The police arrested me at a gas station where I left from to just sit at, but being that she told them I tried to hit her and gave the description, that's what happened. The arrest is what happened. The assault or the bodily injury, she was never touched. And I never made an attempt to try to hit her or anyone else with a car.
What was the outcome of your case?
Overall, I thought it would have been dismissed. You're saying that it was reduced to a misdemeanor?
That's what it says here. It says you were on probation.
If I'm speaking of if I'm matching the actual incident with what you're speaking of, I don't recall any probation. It was simply dismissed because she never showed to court. Because if it wasn't true, there was no basis for her to be there with any false facts.
You've got a lot of arrests for marijuana,
Yes, sir.
both for possession for resale, casual exchange, some felony cases we talked about. Are you using marijuana today?
No, but during those times, that's what I chose for income.
Yeah.
Not really having my direction in mind, I guess. And obviously, that's not a career to look forward to. So I chose a few other things instead to raise my children.
So then that has not been a form of income at all in any recent years?
No, ma'am, not at all.
Who would you be working for if you were given, if your application was approved today?
Angelo's limo service.
Are they here today for you?
He's not. He had a car accident a couple of days ago, but we can get him on conference call, he said, if you need it.
And they did have an email.
Yeah, we have an email
Okay.
from the
Mhm.
company.
Yeah,
Did
there's,
send.
there is an email saying that he's already in the office, he is hiring and.
Mr. Lewis, I apologize if you've already answered that, and I missed it while I was reviewing your information, but if you were not on probation for the assault, what were you on probation for?
Most of my probation memory is just from the drug, the marijuana choices.
Looks like at one time you were on probation for a theft charge too.
Yeah, that was a
Okay.
Walmart thing that got kind of misunderstood. I being in the line, and it was a DVD actually. It was just a simple DVD. I paid for 90% of my order, but somehow the DVD was skipped, and I ended up catching a misdemeanor charge for that.
All right, I've got another question as I'm going through your record.
No
here.
worries.
It's showing contraband introduced into a penal institution.
Yes,
Did you
sir.
serve time in prison?
I did not.
So how's this on your record? You are Anthony George Greenlee, right?
Yes, sir.
And this says July 17th, 2007,
It's the same person.
arresting agency, Metropolitan Police Department. Were you ever charged with bringing contraband into the county jail?
Yes.
Ah, let's hear about that now.
Just an arrest, going to jail for that arrest, having weed in my possession, scared to death, tried to conceal it, and hopefully bond out and not get charged with it, but the strip down found it.
My next question is about your violations of probation. There's a number of times in your record where it shows that you violated the terms of your probation, or were alleged to have violated the terms of your probation and your community corrections. Why were you not able to stay in compliance with community corrections and probation supervision?
Then, just knuckleheadedness.
How old are you today?
49.
Okay. Why do you want this application approved?
It's a career that I can use. It's honest money that I can earn. And I have 2 small children outside of a divorce. And obviously, the weed career is not going to do it.
So tell me a little bit about who you are and why we should put aside your criminal record and grant your application.
Because my age, my physical age and my mental age are different. Then I was just me, directing me, doing what I thought at the time would be best to get me through to the next day. I've built several businesses. I've done dealership. I currently hold a CDL license now. I'm a delivery driver for American Freight. So, at some point in your life, you got to realize that playtime's over. Some mature later than others, and I guess I did. But nevertheless, I stand here a man today outside of some of those choices I made in the past.
Other folks have questions? Thoughts?
When was the last time you have submitted to a drug screen?
For the job at American Freight,
And that was when?
October, November of last year.
Okay, does the job that you're applying for require you to take a drug screen?
He does.
Have you submitted to that, or will that be upon approval?
No, I haven't submitted to it yet, but I guess getting through this will get us to that step, and I'll pass.
Did you say you were currently delivering for American Freight?
Yes, sir.
And you're switching from American Freight to Mr. Anthony Lewis, Angelo Buford? Better
No, sir.
paying job, better hours for the kids? What's the switch about?
More money.
More money?
I'm not switching, actually. It's just inclusive to.
Oh.
I'm gonna
you're
maintain
do-
my job. That covers
you're
the
gonna do both.
household bills.
Okay.
Do you have a question down there, or either of you?
I was looking, I saw several, and I was trying to find the rest of the information, because there's not a lot of detail on this one. Property damage, accident, crash report in, March of 2021. Looks like another property damage accident report, and then at least one speeding. So I was just trying to get a little clarification on our rules for that.
I did not think they were disqualified.
Okay.
No.
That was just confirmed. Sorry.
Any other questions, sir? Mr. Lewis, do you have anything you want to add?
Did I want to add? No, I don't.
How many children do you have?
Total 8,
How many living with you?
2.
Are you married now?
Yeah, but we're going through a divorce.
Sorry.
Don't be.
You never know exactly what to say.
Right. It's probably for the best.
Okay. Is it amicable? Well, it's not my business.
It's peaceful.
Ah, there we go. My interest in that is only because of the assaults and domestics and things of that
Well,
nature.
you know, honestly, the problem with that marriage was I had a wife, and it took me a long time to realize she was an alcoholic. So there's a lot that comes from that. So yeah, I had to let it go.
All right.
I'll make a motion that we grant the license.
All right.
I'll second.
Okay. Before we vote, is there any discussion or anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
So, I mean, just given the amount of, and I own a trucking company as well that does this same thing American Signature does, and I randomly drug screen my drivers, and marijuana has popped up as a problem within my hiring process as well. So I would say that, and I imagine it might be a moot point that that it be approved upon passing a drug screen. I imagine Mr. Buford wouldn't hire you if you didn't pass the drug screen, but I don't think if we didn't put that stipulation in there, that would keep him from getting the certificate.
We can grant a certificate or approve the application with the condition of random drug screens. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Granted contingent upon him meeting a condition.
Yeah. Is that agreeable?
Sure.
Okay. Let's see, we had a motion on the table, we
I'd
had a
like to
second.
Amend the motion? Or do I need to amend it? Or-
Probably the sponsor of the motion ought to amend it.
I'm willing to amend that motion.
And what would your amendment be?
The amendment would be that we grant this application contingent on a clean drug screen.
I second that motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Is that unanimous? Okay. You got your application, you gotta get a drug screen done though.
And he will submit the results to you guys, or?
Yes, we'll contact,
He'll con-
we'll talk to Mr. Buford.
Okay, and then once you get a negative drug screen, what happens after that?
Your application has been granted.
Okay.
You have a condition of that application, which is to pass a drug screen.
So if it comes back positive, then the application is,
Void.
Then your application.
we have it,
yeah,
we have it deal.
will be voided.
We have it deal.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
And just for the new commissioners' information, there are times when we can be flexible in granting an application for many of the different entities that come before us for permits, of putting some conditions on there as we may deem necessary to protect the public.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yes, Mr.
So
Lewis?
do I go back to the taxi commission to get the actual paperwork for the approval certification?
You come
Okay.
right back, we'll, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Stay in touch with Mr. Fields' office, okay?
Okay, do I have your number, Mr. Fields, your
Yeah,
office number?
right where you made application, you come back to the same area on Trinity Lane.
All right, thank you.
Well,
All right, Mr. Fields, why don't we call out Timothy Hastings? Have you shown up? Mr. Fields, what do you recommend? Do we defer it to next month, or?
Since it's a company application and a driver application, it probably makes sense to defer and just explain to him what we've got, and if he wants to come back, he will, and if not, we will not put him on the agenda.
All right, thank you. All right, then, we're now down to taxi cab review driver application for Curtis Mapp. Is Mr. Mapp in the courtroom, or the courtroom, in the room? Excuse me, folks. Slippy tongue there. Hello, Mr. Mapp.
Hello.
Mr. Fields, could you give us a little introduction to Mr. Mapp's application and why it's on our agenda today?
Mr. Mapp made application to be a taxi cab driver. He would be driving if approved for Yellow Cab. The manager of Yellow Cab could not be present, Mr. Trimble. You'll recall Doug Trimble could not be present today because he's actually dispatching taxi cabs. He assured me that if Mr. Mapp is approved, he would have a car on at Yellow Cab. In making his application, there were some charges he failed to list, and he did list several. And there was a long gap between the last one he had and the most recent. But what, right on the top, last February 18th of 2020, he had a patronizing prostitution within a mile and a half of a school. It was not prosecuted by the district attorney's office. There was no conviction nor trial. There was no prosecution. Again, there were others. He listed several, and it was just, again, it's one of those things when one's left out, we have to bring them to you. And then second, when they're extensive. Many of the charges he's had over the years have been dismissed. He did have a conviction in 2003 of possession of cocaine. If you go further back, there were, again, additional arrests. Had a guilty plea of paraphernalia back in 99. Again, he had a long gap between 2011 and 2020 with no charges, and then one charge and no prosecution. So he's here because of the nature of the record and the fact that he left it off.
Are you saying he left off the patronizing prostitution?
Correct.
But, all right, so do you have his application there in front of you?
Yes, sir.
Number 6 on that list of violations. Does that look like it, maybe?
I have to apologize. I'm off today.
It's one of those very...
That was the one that, there were other charges that aren't
Yeah,
listed. That's
yeah.
just the one that jumped out, and I actually missed it in his, so
Okay.
he did fully disclose that. Other than,
All right.
he's qualified from the standpoint of there are no disqualifiers in his application. Anything he would have had are beyond the 10-year period. Mr. Mapp, I publicly apologize.
You're fine.
The gaps that you mentioned, there was a 2011 to 2020 gap, and you mentioned another gap in there, I think.
Yeah, I think there was like a 2007, and there were several, he had some periods where he had some arrests, but go all the way back to 90, let's see, he had, again, from the 11 to 20, then, he had charges in 2008, and a conviction, then it was 2002, that ended up in dismissal, one conviction and the rest were dismissed. That was 2002. Then there were some charges in 99. So again, they were sort of spread out. Had one conviction, had a guilty plea in 99. Had some charges in 98. One plea in 98. 2 pleas in 98. Then from 98 it went back to 93. And then from there it went back to 92 and 90, and so he was around for a while. He and I we have spoken again right before. He and I had a conversation just before the meeting going over that. And again, that's the reason I want to personally apologize because I missed.
Hey, Mr. Mapp, there's 2 things that brings you here before us today. You left some of the things off from here, even though it does, with the number of arrests and convictions that you put down here, it does look like you were trying to be thorough. But I'm going to tell you something. You see what I'm holding here? This is your rap sheet. I got 18 pages. Now, granted, some of them duplicate each other where there was continuances of the case, but the volume doesn't speak well for you for your application today. So talk to us. Tell us why we should grant this application.
Well, I've earned a living as a paid taxes for 40 years, and I want to continue to do that. And that was a period where I did sell drugs. That's what about. And I apologize to you for selling drugs over those years, and I want to continue working legally and earning a living.
Excuse me, how long did you say your taxi cab career was?
Oh, how long? Oh, I just started. I worked with Uber for a year.
You've been a taxi cab driver for 40
Oh no,
years.
I said I paid taxes for 40 years.
Oh, okay. Wow, you started young in the taxi.
Tell me a little bit about who you are and where you live.
I live
You
in
have family, whatever.
I live in South Nashville. I'm single and got an engineering degree and work with the state as an engineer and with South Central Bell as an engineer. That's about it.
Some of these selling of controlled substance convictions you have, did you go to prison for it?
Yes, sir.
I was wondering if maybe some of these times when there was no criminal record, was that why you were incarcerated?
I was incarcerated approximately from 2003 to 2005, and from 2008 to 2010. That's it.
So at least 2 felony convictions
Yeah.
that resulted in prison time? Are you on probation today?
Oh no, sir.
All right. When did you get off probation? The last time you were ever on probation? When was the last time you had to report to a probation officer?
2018.
Okay, and that was for what?
Drugs.
Yeah, and felony drug
Mhm.
charges? Or
Yeah, I got
misdemeanor?
convicted in 2010. Put on probation.
And,
Uh,
and you completed probation
Oh, yes,
in
sir.
2018, you
Yes,
think?
sir.
Okay. And the conviction in 2010 was for what?
Drugs.
Well, I know.
Cocaine.
Okay, so selling cocaine?
Possession. With
Possession.
intent.
Possession with the intent? So you had a quantity of cocaine that they inferred was for resale?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you got an 8-year sentence?
12.
12-year sentence.
I completed it because I did some time,
Mhm.
and the time you get more time while you're inside.
Right, so you got some good and honor time and you reduced the amount of time till your sentence was terminated.
Yes, sir.
All right. And so your was it probation or parole that
Parole.
Parole, okay. So in 2018 you got off parole.
Yes, sir.
All right. So you completed your 12-year sentence in 8 years.
Yes, sir.
All right.
You might have another.
We do. Yeah. You want to enlighten us, Ms. Costones, please?
Okay, so the language of C1 says has been convicted, pleaded guilty, nolo contendere, placed on judicial diversion pursuant to 4035-313, or been released from incarceration, probation, or parole within a period of 7 years prior to the date of the application for violation of any of the following offenses, and those offenses include the felony possession, sale, or distribution of narcotic drugs or controlled substances. So if he was on probation or parole for a felony drug conviction within the last 7 years, he would not be eligible.
Did you understand what she was explaining? And while I respect that we might need to look a little further into it or anything, does that sound accurate that you got off parole in 2018?
Yes. Yes.
For
That's correct.
a possession of cocaine for
Yes.
resale?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And that's within the last 7 years?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Appear to fit within
if we're wrong about any of that, you need to speak up or.
No, that's correct.
Okay. I believe you're not, I'm not even, you're not eligible for for a permit. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, okay, all right, thank you,
Please come back at some point, okay?
all right, thank you guys.
Another 4 years, okay?
Okay.
Well, maybe 3 more years, maybe.
All right, thank y'all.
You're welcome. So, does that bring us to the end of our, to the other business now?
I have no other business to bring to the commission. We will probably be very busy in March, April, and May with additional things. There will be there will have to be a series of rulemaking, conversations about, entertainment transportation. If the state continues the path they have, it is, in the House, it is being calendared for, the correct, that it would be calendared for consideration of giving, cities the authority to regulate these vehicles.
Mr. Fields, could you elaborate on what vehicles we're talking about now?
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry, entertainment transportation, that would include the large buses, it would include the tractors, that pull the trailers, any vehicle that is above 15 passengers and 10,000 pounds.
Because in the past, we were limited on what we could regulate. This commission was limited to only vehicles less than 15 people, passengers, and less than what, 10,000?
10,000 pounds.
Right, by state law, so that what we're currently talking about is the change to state law that will allow us to begin regulating those larger types of vehicles.
As if we didn't already have a lot to regulate, so.
And then in anticipation of of the state making that change, the Metropolitan Council had previously passed an ordinance adopting chapter 677 in 010 at SAC, and that will regulate these entertainment transportation vehicles effective April 1. So beginning on April 1, you all, assuming the state bill goes through smoothly, which it seems to be doing, you all will have the authority to enforce that chapter and adopt and create regulations interpreting that chapter, as long as they're consistent with its provisions.
But when a bill goes through and the governor signs it, aren't they usually become effective July 1st of that particular year? Not?
In this particular case, the bill is effective immediately.
Oh.
Is what the language is.
I think sometimes they are effective immediately.
But I
yeah.
think you're right. Some, they can be dated. For instance, the ordinance that the Metropolitan Council passed, which was,
I can pull it up.
2020-911, stated that it would go, we would not have authority until April the 1st. So it was passed in November, and then lists April 1st as the time we can act.
He's asking about state legislation specifically, though. Hang
Well,
on just one second.
I'm
I'll
pretty
pull it
sure
up.
it's effective. While she's doing that, we have, I have met with the industry, meeting with other groups and people that want to talk about it. So there will be public hearings. The question of when we can have the public hearings, when you can take action, there was some question, Mrs. Costanos has advised me that you can't actually take any formal action until after April the 1st.
This act takes effect upon becoming a law, the public welfare requiring it.
Okay.
So I've had a couple of forecasts. I've had one forecast that would be by the end of February. It will not be by the end of February. Now I'm being told the middle of March. So at the state level. So you will have, there's 10 or 12 things that you're gonna need to do pretty quick, because we'll need to set fees. We'll need to establish, you'll need to consider operating guidelines, whether they're zones, whether they're routes. You would also have thoughts on any other kind of operational things. We'll need to talk about mechanical standards and vehicle condition and that sort of thing. So it will be, and they'll have to be in public hearings to make decisions. Now, I guess it's possible for you to have other kind of meetings to not take any action, but you could have a public hearing, not take actions. So we'll be advising you as best we can in terms of what we would recommend at least, and then the commission can make a decision.
You'll notify the appropriate people with the Central Police Department, Central, what do they call it, division down here, so that they can have their input for us like they have in the past?
Many have already asked specifically to be present for any rulemaking session. All those that have asked to be present, we will do our very best to make sure.
It'll be like a line at Disneyland.
Well, it will be very much like when you consider SUMDs. You'll also be very much like when you have annual hearings, for instance, in August, when you consider additional pedal carriages or pedicabs, that sort of thing. Or if you'll, for those that have been here a while, back in 2014, when we had the meeting of all meetings to talk about increasing cab fleets in Nashville.
What about a consultant or somebody that could tell us about other cities that have done it, or anybody that can give us kind of, that has some experience with these decisions?
Unfortunately, we are the most experienced by far of any city in America, maybe the world, when it comes to entertainment transportation. If you were to Google a lot, it says Nashville, and sometimes it even says Billy Fields. And it is, you know, it's very much like, if you remember the Uber and Lyft, with where there were no cities with any real regulations, where we were basically drafting and negotiating, and when the Metropolitan Airport became the first airport in the country that actually allowed Uber and Lyft to operate within the laws. So we're very much in the same place we were this many years later, and I wish we weren't.
I'm always apprehensive when we're on the cutting edge that we don't cut ourselves.
I understand.
Oh, your name will go down in history.
You can always amend the regulations later.
Yeah.
Well,
all right, any other new business, Mr. Fields,
I
or
have no
old business, or other business?
No, sir.
All right, we usually end our meetings with a motion to adjourn. Do any of the new commissioners want to make a motion today?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure, we've got a few. Does anybody mind if I just leave the meeting open for just a moment, find out what's going on here, okay? Do you know Mr. Fields?
You're in the I do not.
Okay.
I won't take long.
Would you please introduce yourself first and just give me just a one-liner of why you want to speak?
Okay, my name is Melinda Grant. I'm the operations manager for Gypsy Cabs and former manager of Green Cab, which is no longer with us. I'm here because I feel like I am a voice for the taxi cabs, and I know hundreds of the drivers, and this board passes or declines for new companies to come in, and it took us 1.5 to 2 years just to get our permits as a taxi cab company. And when I look at what's happening now, you know, when I see, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of Ubers and Lyft are here, and the taxi cab industry is falling. The families of every taxi driver in this town is falling, and most of them are immigrants. There was a report done here in Nashville, and I believe it was through the Transportation Licensing Commission, maybe 2012, something like that, to see if there was any room for taxi cabs in this city. I am broken, like I am holding back my tears, because these are families we're talking about, where I don't know how Uber and Lyft got in this city. I don't know how, but somebody was paid off big millions of dollars, and I'm sure the city was. Somebody was.
Mr. Chairman, may I? Just so you know exactly, Uber and Lyft, they're network companies, were given permission by the Tennessee State Legislature and the state government. The city of Nashville passed legislation in 674 that actually talked about regulation, and passed probably the second in the country. Certainly I don't control the meeting. Any inferences toward this commission or the city of Nashville having anything to do with them being here or not being here is from my perspective, because I was here and some of the commissioners were here, Uber and Lyft operate under state authority, not ours. I was unhappy. Well, I'll quit. Mr. Chairman, that's the reason Uber and Lyft is able to operate in Tennessee.
I think the point that we really want to make sure you understand is that this commission tried to regulate Uber and Lyft, and it was taken away from us.
And
the state-
it's still on the books. 674 still
There's
has
a
no-
different standard for somebody who drives a vehicle under Uber or Lyft, and there's a different standard for somebody who drives a vehicle, is regulated by the city, state, county, whatever commissions that there are. But I need you guys to know that these are real families that are getting hurt. Every time another company comes to be a transportation company, all these entertainment things, yes, it's good for tourism, but we're a circus. It is a circus downtown. And my last point, I'm sorry if I'm getting personal about it, but the last thing is gypsies. Forever there have been gypsy cabs. If you're not familiar what a gypsy cab is, it's somebody who is downtown or anywhere really, and they say, hey, you need a ride, come on, get in, and they'll open the door for you. They have no permits. They are not with any company. They are just a single-handed person with a vehicle coming to get our drunk residents at 2 o'clock in the morning, coming out of bars to get raped, murdered, whatever. I'm probably going too far, but there are too many gypsy cabs in this town. For years, I have been trying to fight it, and all I am ever told is there's only 2 inspectors in town. They're very well aware of what's going on. They can't do anything. There's just 2 of them. And I just ask that the next time that you guys go to pass another new company, a transportation company, that you look at the taxi cab company that is barely surviving. I love them. They mean something to me. They're family to me. I've got to know them. I've got to know their families, and they're hurting. Their taxi's not going to exist another couple years, maybe, if they're that lucky. Most of them work half-time for the taxis, and then they go the other half of the day, and they work for Uber.
Thank you
So,
for expressing
Thank you
that
for,
interest on the behalf of the taxi cab and their families.
thank you for giving me your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, there was a motion on the floor for adjournment. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.